Welcome. I'm your host, Jeff Bell. You've tuned in to The Story Behind the Glory, a weekly talk show. In the pursuit of excellence as in any endeavor in life, a fingerprint of struggles, disappointments, despair, thrills, and victories are often created. But do we ever get to know the real story behind the fame of celebrities, athletes, movie stars, politicians, publicists, and others? Well, this show, The Story Behind the Glory, provides a format for celebrities and others to share their story. Although I've personally known many of our guests and have spent years developing a friendship relationship with them, like you, I have yet to hear their story. So would you please join me as we welcome Mr. Ray Costa. Ray, welcome to The Story Behind the Glory.
Pleasure being here.
Good. Thank you. Ray Costa and I have gone back a few years. Ray is I tell you, a Hollywood publicist would be an understatement, try using that term. But he also is president of a PR firm, is that correct, in Hollywood? And he represents everyone you can almost imagine. Nicki Minaj, I was really...
Yeah, we worked with the songwriters of Nicki Minaj and One Direction, and the producers and songwriters of their biggest hits, yeah.
Would you mind telling the audience a little bit about the role of a publicist? I mean, most people kind of PR, they kind of get them mixed up, and especially as it relates to entertainment, movie industries and such.
Well, a publicist, or also known as a press agent's job, is to promote and highlight a company, an individual, and garnering public exposure for them in a way that improves the image, and it could be anything from getting articles in newspapers and magazines, being on shows, to events where the person or business is highlighted.
Now, when you were growing up, at first I think you were from Cuba, is that correct? You were born in Cuba.
I was born in Cuba.
Can you tell us how you got to California? I want to hear the story.
All right.
I want to hear the story.
So I was born in Cuba, and my family left Cuba with Castro when I was 10 months old. And my dad was a TV director and producer in Cuba, and his friends who had left the country already said, "You don't want to move to Miami. You want to go into advertising. You need to live in New York." So he became like a madman. Got into advertising, started as a copywriter, and worked for a lot of ad agencies. And we got transferred around a lot. So I lived half my life on the East Coast and then half in the South. And he was directing commercials for Maybelline and Coppertone and QT. And
Your dad?
My dad.
Okay.
And then so went from there went to college in Memphis and worked professionally in radio in Memphis for WHBQ Radio, which was
That was Elvis, right?
Yeah.
That's one of Elvis thing. Okay.
Yeah, Dewey Phillips played the first Elvis Presley record, That's All Right, Mama.
Okay.
And before my time.
That was a few,
I think it was
a few years ago.
1957 or 58, something like that.
Okay, that was a few years ago.
And then Rick Dees also came from that station.
Oh, okay. This is in Memphis.
So I got on there, and I was doing part-time news, and then I became I was a news reporter and doing public affairs, and it became a news talk radio station, and I was able to survive the transition. And I enjoyed it, but even my news director was such a news hound. You had to know about world politics and be really to be a member of this news team. It was quite respected in the town. Yeah. But he said, "You like that glitzy lifestyle? You should go into public relations." And
that's how, okay. So you're a news director. Okay.
Yeah, but he meant it kind of as an insult, but for me it was like an epiphany. Okay. And I wanted to get to LA, so I said, okay.
So that was your ticket. I mean, that was your inspiration anyway.
Yeah, it's like, now I need an exit strategy because I want to come out here. And I did a story on media hype for my show I had on public affairs, and I interviewed the president of publicity for Fox.
Oh, okay.
And he said, "Can you send me a tape of the show?" I said, "Oh, I'm going to be in LA in 2 weeks." Then I bought a ticket to come to LA and to hand him the tape in person.
Okay.
And I stayed in touch with him, and there was some power play or something. He lost his job, and then I stayed in touch with him. And what happens a lot of times is when you're not working, you know who your friends are. And
definitely.
People weren't talking to him, and I kept talking to him and everything. And he said, "Hey, I know you want to move out here. If you move out here, I can hire you part-time." And it's like, that's all I need to know.
That was your break.
And I did that for a while, and then he ended up retiring from the business, and I just kept doing it. And
Wow, now that is the story, right? Tell me when at the times that you were working the radio, for example, in Memphis, what are some of the challenges and such that you felt that help you today to be to where you are, that you had to endure, go through?
well, the beauty of that, that'll be for a whole other show. But I was a firefighter also when I was in high school.
Firefighter. Okay, now
So-
that part I really didn't know. I didn't know
So-
a firefighter.
so that'll be
I had
a
no
different
idea
show.
you were a firefighter. Okay, that's another show. We have to get into that.
But so with that, you have to learn to, be prepared for anything, and
Yes.
crises can occur at any moment. And then working in radio, similar situation. Suddenly there'd be something happening, and you're on the scene, and it was a news talk station, and literally I would go there, take interviews, get on a payphone at the time, and hook these little things up to the phone, and even send a portion of the interview of the actuality of what you said, and I would write 3 or 4 stories within an hour of having an event, and which was very good for what I do now, because I was able to write very quickly and
Wow.
come up with news angles quickly.
So I mean, how did you get into representing so many famous individuals? I mean, you're coming from Memphis, L.A., working part-time for Fox director. What was it, a golden connection, or?
You know what? It definitely wasn't a golden connection. I mean, it's funny because when I started my own business, I was doing anything you could imagine. I was promoting jet ski races and
Sure.
and just doing what I could. And then the turning point was this person who I worked with briefly asked me if I wanted to go with him to talk to this record label, GMP Crescendo Records, and he knew the vice president of the label, who was the son of the owner. And I met with when we had the meeting, the day of the meeting. He couldn't make it, the other publicist, and he said, "Why don't you just take the meeting?" So I took the meeting, and then I said, "Okay, they want us to write a proposal, blah blah blah." And he said, and the other publicist said to me, "Well, why don't you just go ahead and write the proposal?" So I did that, and then I got the job, and he said, "Why don't you just go ahead and do it?" And that's kind of what launched it. Is I was working with soundtracks, score albums, jazz artists, and kind of trial by fire. I just was
So
doing.
you do a little bit of everything.
But then I started specializing in that area of music, and
Okay.
then I went to a scoring session, which is the
Oh yes.
the first scoring session I went to. I fell in love with the whole process. There was a 80-piece orchestra, and the composer was also conducting the orchestra, and and there was the film on screen, and I fell in love with that process of it. Wow. And during a break, I had a photographer there, and I said, "Hey, I need you for some photos." And everyone's like, "Shh." I go, "Hey, we're releasing his album," and it was Jerry Goldsmith, who was one of the most famous composers that ever lived, and I had no idea who he was at the time. But then I started specializing, working with songwriters and composers. And word of mouth, and I've through the years I've been honored to work with some of the greatest composers.
John Debney, you've worked.
John Debney to Marvin Hamlish, and last year Justin Timberlake to
I know Justin Timberlake. Wow.
Yeah, can't stop the feeling. We did the entire campaign from before the Grammys and all that from the minute that came out. We worked.
So
that
this
campaign.
year you had several nominees, right?
We're very fortunate. We worked with on the song side for nominees. We were working with Tara Stinson, who co-wrote "Mighty River" for Mudbound, and we also were working with consulting with Diane Warren and Common for "Stand Up for Something" from Marshall, and then Alexandre Desplat, the composer of "Shape of Water."
Oh yeah, "Shape of Water."
"Shape of Water."
Yeah, it won.
It won, and not only that,
right?
I was thrilled that Alexandre Desplat also thanked me at the Oscars and the Golden Globes on stage.
That is great. Wow,
that was great.
Yeah, that was great.
So "Shape of Water," I can't believe for 2 seconds I forgot.
Water. That was it. Hold that water. Hold that thought for a second. We'll be right. We have to go to commercial break, but when we come back, I want to get into Passion of the Christ. I
Okay.
understand that you work with John Debney on the Passion of the Christ. I'm
Okay.
going to get into that a little bit.
Okay.
Also with Christopher Young, who's also a great composer.
Okay.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back. We have to take a commercial break, and we'll see you in just a few minutes. We'll be back with Ray Costa. Hi, welcome. Thank you for sticking with us for a second. We were visiting, we're still visiting with Ray Costa, publicist, Hollywood publicist, that is. And Ray, you and I were discussing, number one, that you represent several nominees in the recent Oscars. And my wife and I had an opportunity to attend some of the nice parties, of course, and you know a little bit about that. But you were talking about The Shape of Water. One of your clients, or actually won original score, right?
Mm-hmm.
For
Yes.
The Shape of Water. It was very interesting. And I mentioned you mentioned John Debney. Debney is an excellent composer and a passionate writer. Tell me what it's like to work with John Debney as a publicist, because I understand a PR individual is a lot different than a publicist. Would you mind then sharing, to kind of maybe give us an example of your role as a publicist and then your role from the PR perspective?
Okay, well, I'm very fortunate that I work with extremely talented, yet for the most part, somewhat humble people. They don't have huge egos. They don't have.
Oh, in Hollywood?
I know. That's why it's a joy. I've had bad experiences with some actors. I know there's lovely actors out there, but I purposely specialize in what I do. But John Debney and his wife Lola Debney are two of the most lovely people, and I've worked with him for over a decade, and he's amazing. And the first project that his agent brought to me, I think it may have been Liar Liar, but it was like the day before the premiere or the day of the premiere. And I said, no, I don't want to start working with him this late in the game, and and be judged by that. So then he came to me right after he got Passion of the Christ, and I had no idea how it was going to be. Mel Gibson was funding it. It was in Aramaic, and it's like, wow. But it was a beautiful score, and
yes.
it was like an amazing movie, and it was, one of the most amazing campaigns I've ever had the joy of working on, because there was a lot of controversy, but John was very passionate about it. We did a lot of press on it. He was invited to be on the press junket, and he was, we took it even further, and I said, John, we should put this in concert. And then we did concerts. We premiered it in Rome.
Oh, wow.
I invited.
I had no idea.
Yeah, we did it. That was, I'll give it a 30-second story. We did it in Rome, and I invited the Pope at the time.
Did you really?
And yeah,
Wow. Did he?
And the Archbishop of the Vatican. And the day before I was leaving, I get a call, and my assistant thought it was a crank call. Said, the Archbishop of the Vatican is on the phone. I'm like, hello,
Yeah.
look up.
Hung up.
Your Excellency,
Right, right. What are you supposed to address to?
Your Highness? What is it?
Your Highness.
So he said, oh, I'm so sorry to contact you so late. Oh, it's all right. He said, well, I'd like to attend. And I said, great. Pope couldn't make it, but, I get the Archbishop.
Archbishop, yeah.
So it was a really amazing concert. And I've been dealing with the Italians, the press people in Italy for several months. And how our ticket sales are, they're fine. We get there 3 days before the concert, and I asked, how are ticket sales? I said, Ray, we need to talk to you. And they said, we've sold 4. I said, 400 tickets? And I said, no, we sold 4 tickets.
4 tickets.
And it's
no.
the room, the beautiful arena, 4,000 seater.
Oh, 4,000.
So it's like, okay, we're going to make flyers. They said, oh no, we don't do that in Italy. I said, oh no, we're doing flyers.
Flyers.
So
you're doing something, right?
I pulled John Debney's wife to the side.
Right, yeah.
And, I
She's
said,
great.
I need to talk to you, very important. And I told her, and she said, 400? No, 4 tickets.
Four tickets.
And she had about 8 relatives there, and I said, tomorrow we're going to the Vatican, and we're handing out, I'm having several thousand flyers printed. And we're going to be handing them out. Every one of your relatives,
In-laws,
your niece,
everyone.
your nephew,
Yeah,
your
want
sons,
everyone out there,
your
yes.
mom and dad, everybody's handing out these flyers
Wow.
because we got to get people here.
Yes.
And the day of the concert, we almost had a sellout. Which was amazing.
That's the
Yeah,
story.
that was a miracle.
Amazing. That is a miracle. Passion of the Christ.
And the best is after,
Oh.
and John got to meet the Archbishop, and John said, it was so great. I couldn't have asked for anything more, but there were some empty seats there, and I was hoping we'd sell out. And I said, John, we had 4 tickets sold 2 days ago.
You didn't know
And
that.
he's like,
you know,
no,
well,
it's
yeah.
a very
He
good.
said, this is great, right?
But
now, did John? Let me ask you.
and then he got Oscar nominated for it.
Yeah, he
too.
did.
Yeah.
Sure. Now, did he conduct that himself?
He conducted it himself,
Yeah,
and he also
he's great.
conducted
Wow.
it in Czech Republic. He's
Okay.
conducted it in Spain,
Mm-hmm.
and there was one concert that I produced 3 years ago in Cordoba, Spain,
Mm-hmm.
which has the second largest mosque in the world. But during the Spanish Inquisition, it became the Catholics took part of it over, and you go in, it's beautiful. There's like part of it's Muslim, part of it's Roman Catholic, and we did the Passion Symphony in there, and we had over 6,000 people for that concert, and it was amazing.
Wow, that is amazing. That's an excellent story. Ray, and now, in terms of the publicist today, as you are, how does that differ from the old PR person? Most individuals think, well, if I get a PR firm, I can handle this.
Well, there's an old movie, I think it was, Jack Lemmon starred in it, Days of Wine and Roses, where he's a publicist,
I
and
can't recall.
Back then it was like you would wine and dine one reporter and get them to write a story,
Oh,
and there
okay.
was only about half a dozen outlets, and now there's thousands of outlets, but also there's so much noise out there. It's hard to get your, it's easier to get your message out there, but to get it across to the right audience, takes finesse,
Like a
because
fire hose. There's so
Yeah.
much information coming and going.
and the problem is too is you don't need a license to be a publicist, and there's a lot of people who aren't shouldn't be doing that, but they'll get their word out on social media and this and that, but it's all has to do with how you present it and what you're trying to present. And again, it's an art. There's some very, very good publicists and other people who I don't think are, but it's shifted so much. I was one of the first PR firms to have a website when I started that,
Really?
and
You
some,
think that'd be common? That's a common.
no,
thing.
but when it first started, and when the World Wide Web was this phenomenon, I went after a major artist, and she said, "Why should I work with you instead of Rogers and Cowan?" And I said, "Because I'm on the World Wide Web."
Oh, that was a big thing then. So, Ray, give me some of the others. I know Christopher Young is done. He's another
Yeah.
great composer. And what about some of the entertainers you work with?
Well, I've worked with singer-songwriters, but like I said, I've worked with some actors in the past, but I kind of avoid that situation. But I've done a lot of concert promotion, and I've worked on awards campaigns with everyone, like I mentioned, Justin Timberlake. I worked with Taylor Swift.
Oh,
So,
yes, I saw
Gwen
your
Stefani.
recent photo with Taylor Swift. That was
Yeah.
very nice. Very nice. How was she to work with?
She's a lovely and very talented professional person.
Right. The times that you were working, have been working as you are today as a publicist, what are some of the major attributes you think that kept you together and going and contributed to your success?
Well, I'm working with a niche, but it's a harder sell than working with a major celebrity. So it's finding a unique angle, and I think having the journalistic background helped me in that.
Okay.
Also, I produce a lot of events. I produce concerts all over the world now as well.
Wow.
So it's an opportunity to highlight the works of my clients. I also moderate panels. I have a panel at Newport Beach coming up in April. I have one in April there. I do. I also do do one in Middleburg, Virginia at the Middleburg Film Festival. And so it's also finding unique angles.
Okay.
And whether it's something unique of how someone did a score or helping a composer find the angle that's unique.
Okay, I like that. Ray, looking back to say 4 or 5, 8 years from now, somewhere you were to look back, how would you like others to think of you? Or what phrase you think, one word that would best describe your legacy? I know it's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Right now, answer the question.
Your legacy. What do you think? What word or phrase you think best describes you, your legacy, that's your contribution to
Innovator.
to life? Innovator. I like that.
Because
Innovator.
I've started at least 4 film music festivals throughout the world that are still
I had no
operating after
idea.
a decade. I've produced these concerts, like I said, also, and I've really helped push the importance of a film composer out there because they weren't getting the recognition they deserve.
So-
I would hope that I help contribute to a little bit of that exposure.
So, innovator.
Yeah.
An innovator. Boy, I like that. That's good. Well, this has been great. I can go on for days and days. I haven't seen you in a while, but it's been so great just talking with you and hearing your story. Well, many of the aspects which I had no idea. My son learned a lot from John Debney and both Christopher Young, son Joseph, and so that we can just talk for days. I really enjoyed this. Anyway,
When's Joe going to hire Joseph to hire me?
pretty soon. Right? That's a good question. He'll be coming from New York pretty soon, real soon. Hey, I'm your host, Jeff Bell. You've tuned into The Story Behind the Glory. You just listened to Ray Costa. Until next time, God bless. And don't forget, you, like others, have a story.